All right, teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the show. Welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. To my regular listeners, buckle up your chin straps, buckle up your seat belts, get ready because we have an absolute story today. Someone who's incredibly transparent, has been through a lot, has grown through a lot, and is not afraid at all to put her soul out there or put her heart on camera because she knows how much it can help somebody else. Miss Shay Sparks, I'll tell you, I listened to a lot of your work to get ready for this, and I'm already moved. I'm already kind of moved just having you on the show. So, with all that, welcome to the show. Great to have you.
Aswan, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here, and let's get this conversation started.
Yeah, I mean, we could start from jump. You grew up again, a lot like I want to say it was like me, but you grew up in a household that was I want to say it was sort of confusing because
Mm,
there was a point where you said you were 11 years old and you started drinking. Now,
yeah,
you being in a growing up in a Caribbean household, there was access to alcohol, and I know some Caribbean households who, my mother used to tell me, I was like, some people that can't keep alcohol in the house, but football
right.
kept me away from actually engaging in that stuff. But you were going through some things just from from that young age that made it so you felt like you were compelled to drink and you're trying to numb some things that were going on. So I'll let you kind of take it away and then we'll kind of go from there to how you now fire started, books out, just absolutely killing the game, doing your thing. So the floor is yours.
Wow. Well, that's a fun place to start.
Yeah.
So started drink. Well, the first time I shouldn't say started drinking. I got drunk for the first time at 11.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to sit on my dad's lap while he was drinking beer at night. So probably like, I don't know, between 4 and 5 maybe, and take sips out of his beer. So that's when I really fell in love with the taste of alcohol.
Right.
And it wasn't until um yeah, I was 15 when I was drinking daily.
Right.
But in the house that I grew up in was very sarcastic. It was confusing, like you mentioned. There
Mm-hmm.
was a lot of circumstances that was like, I think that's love, but it's really not.
Right.
And so it was, and, bullying, making fun of each other was
Yeah.
on the regular.
Right.
And I really didn't realize how depressed I was,
Mm-hmm.
or even trying to numb the sadness
Right.
until many years later. But when I was 16, I got a DUI, and that was a huge wake up call.
Right.
And then it wasn't until I was 24 when I quit drinking altogether.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been sober for 25 years, but I'm only 29, so I don't really even know how math works. And
Congrats.
thank you.
Last year I spent my full year sober, and the rewarding feeling that comes with
Awesome.
that, man, it's amazing when, and actually,
Yeah.
for listeners don't know, we actually have a mutual connection with, shout out to Taj, my boy Taj. He knows me in college as one.
Yes.
College as one was getting fucked up, at
Right.
least 3 nights a week. So,
Sure.
for me to go sober for a year with no real issue was like a big deal for me. So,
Well, congratulations.
yeah,
It's
thank
it's
you.
it's huge,
Yes,
right?
it is.
One day is huge. So
Yeah.
congratulations for one
Mhm.
year. Yeah.
So there were points that you were mentioning that really were hitting some serious triggers with me because as you were saying, my name was difficult to pronounce, and like you, I was teased a lot. What is this? Some ass swan? The whole thing. Now,
Yeah.
again, football helped me cope with it because that's where I got my acceptance, and it didn't really matter what your name was as long as you're showing up, willing to work hard, and be a part of a team. But when that sport was taken away from me, I mean, when you're just not good enough to play anymore, that's where a lot of those lost feelings come into play. And one of the things that you were very, very transparent about sharing is, you were in a very abusive relationship. You were in a relationship that I was listening, I couldn't imagine how you got through that. So I think it might be best to kind of go there after you
Yep.
were, again, you left, I think you said 16, you went to
Yep.
college and then you moved back in with your dad or something like that. And then again,
Yep.
those feelings of a man, trying to develop those and those kinds of things. I'd love for you to just kind of clarify that for the audience, and then just show what you've actually been through and how you're just still chugging away because people don't know. I mean, you look like a very
Yeah.
strong, put together woman, but it comes from a really deep, deep place. So,
Mm. Thank you.
mhm.
And thank you for doing your research. I mean, man, how amazing are you as a host to really dive and go, okay, I'm gonna
I've
listen
been
to all
listen,
this
listen to me,
crap that she
and then
talks
listen.
about.
We've been doing this for 4 years,
Yeah,
but the listeners know, man. I don't bullshit. When people come on, I show the
I
respect,
love it.
make sure I know what the hell I'm
I
talking
love it.
about. So,
Well, thank you. Yeah, so when the reason I quit drinking is, to be honest, I was with an alcoholic and I didn't even realize that he was an alcoholic, but I was with him for 12 years. We had, um, a, God, a toxic relationship at best, the best way to describe it. And he had a double life. We moved in together, and 4 years later, I found out that I had her, married this woman at the same time we moved in together and had a couple kids. The lies and the manipulation and all of the like you just said, the bullshit that it's like,
right.
holy cow. And then the broken promises, I will change, I will do this, I will get a divorce, I will do
Mhm.
all this. And we didn't live together anymore after that, but we maintained well, I shouldn't say we maintained. We were on again, off again, on again, on constantly. It was a
Mm.
constant fight, constant abuse, verbal abuse, mental, physical. And through it all, I learned how to fight back, right? I had two older brothers growing up that they would get in fights and I would fight them. And so here I am now just fighting a dude and just literally one day at a time, like they
Right.
teach us in AA of, oh, okay, is today the day he's going to kill me? And just going in, waking up, going through the motions, going to
Hmm.
work, lying and never telling anyone anything at work,
Hmm.
going home, and then living the torture, the hell that I was in every day. And at some point, he was in a car accident, and I was able to break free.
Hmm.
I had to break up with his sister
Right.
because his family was still trying to get me to be responsible for him. And I was like, absolutely not. First of all,
Mm.
he's been married to this other woman, and then he at some point got a divorce. But it's like, why are you knew about this? Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
stand up for me or whatever? And they were like, oh, well, it was his business. It's like, oh, geez.
That's bullshit.
And when I
Yeah.
explained that, I had done research on his personality. I mean, here he is in a coma, brain
Hmm.
damage. They move him from from the hospital ICU to a long-term care facility to a nursing home.
Hmm.
And, that's where he lived for the last 13 years of his life before he passed away.
Hmm.
And I explained to them in the beginning days, like, look, I've done research on his personality. I think he has
Right.
something called borderline personality disorder. It's like
Right.
bipolar slash schizophrenia. And a
Right.
lot of times it comes from child abuse. And his sister's like, child abuse? He was never abused. He's a compulsive liar. And I said,
Right.
well, your aunt told me,
Right.
not him.
Hmm.
And she was like, wow, okay. And then the tears started coming. And then she's like, I hope he doesn't blame me for not stopping her.
Right.
And all of the things that comes out when secrets are exposed, right?
Yeah. I understand.
And yeah, and I immediately, once he was in that car accident, I started on my healing journey, as I like to call it.
Hmm.
I started Christian counseling week one,
Hmm.
started listening to podcasts, reading books, journaling. I journaled beforehand, but really
Yeah.
dived into what it means to break free from codependency
Yeah.
and peel away the layers of the onion that I am, that we all are,
Right. Right.
and just really heal.
Yes.
And that right there is like the most important thing anyone can do professionally and
Yeah.
personally,
Yes.
because then you're able to understand who you were meant to be professionally and be
Hmm.
able to go from a healed point of view, a freedom point of view, rather from fear.
Yeah. So I want to kind of put this in context here because you did mention that you stopped drinking because of him. And I want to make
Yeah.
sure as male listeners, the men listening in, the power that we actually have and the
Mm,
responsibility that comes with whenever you don't know what a young lady may be going through, you don't know what their actual thought process is. And if you are not being responsible to say, hey, look, I'm saving this young woman's life because I'm the reason she stopped drinking, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, maybe it was because he was an alcoholic. I don't know, but the bottom line is you were doing something productive because you met a guy. All right. So what I want men, specifically men, to understand is we have power. We have that ability to change people's lives for the better. Now, also at the same time, ladies listening in, learn from the mistakes, learn from the concept of I'm not going to depend so much on a guy that I give up my entire life or I have so much dependency on him to where, as you said, look, the guy's married, he's in a situation, and I still couldn't break free. I still couldn't figure out ways in which I could just cut it off at at the core. And you never want to put yourself in that situation. And
Right.
I'm glad that you were able to sort of live to tell the story, because you did mention there was actual weapons, there were guns pointed, there
Yep.
were things where you actually had to physically fight. And I could only imagine those moments. I could only imagine how scary those moments were for you. But, when it comes to the counseling aspect of it, can you kind of speak on when the breakthrough started happening? Because
Mm,
man, I'm not going to pretend to be able to resonate with feeling like that. There's been
yeah.
times where I've been depressed and all that, but it wasn't on the level that you've gone through. How do you even begin to heal? What's a
Mhm.
win? All right. What's a
Yeah.
win?
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
no, what's a day that says, oh shit, all right, at least I made it through the day? Because I'm always telling people that go through a lot of stuff, simply take it day by day, take it day by day. So
Yeah.
what was an example of a winning moment where you're like, all right, now I'm getting the fire started. I got my books going. I'm doing my coaching. Walk us through that process a little bit.
Yeah. So I just want to back up to something you said.
Yeah,
The
go
reason
ahead.
I quit drinking is because someone had to be responsible in the relationship because he was definitely an alcoholic,
Hmm.
drinking every day.
Right.
So jump ahead now. Here I am
Hmm.
in the first coaching or the first counseling session. And I'm telling the counselor, what I'm experienced that my boyfriend's literally in a
Oh my.
hospital bed as
Yeah.
we speak in a coma and I want to get out.
Yeah.
And he said, "You were abused." And I was like, "Abused?" And he's like, "Yeah, you were abused." And I was like, I didn't even say that word out loud.
Hmm.
And so I left that session and went to visit with my best friend who didn't know. I never told anyone.
Hmm.
And I whispered it to her. We were sitting in a restaurant for 4 hours where I just cried and I said, I was abused. And she's like, abused? And I said, yeah. And it was like the voice that I had been wanting to use since a small child was finally speaking out.
Hmm.
And it's as if the door was open that gave me permission just to say that word, that I
Hmm.
was abused, gave me permission to continue to share my story
Okay.
so that each time I went through a counseling session, each journal moment, each
Hmm.
coaching, each podcast I listened to, whatever milestone I learned about myself at that time, professionally, I was a hairstylist. I had a salon
Yeah.
and I had a captive audience in my chair, every
Hmm.
day, all day long. And so my clients would come in and sit down and they would I'm like, what's new, what's happening in your world? And they'd tell me, and then they'd say, what's going on with you? And I'm like, well, you're not going to believe what I learned about myself this week.
Hmm.
Because I started to tell them like I was abused, it was awful, and here
Hmm.
I was, and now here I am. And they would say, well, first of all, you're so strong because I
Hmm.
never knew.
Hmm.
And second of all, I would say, here's what I learned. I learned
Hmm.
about myself that I'm emotionally unavailable. And
Hmm.
they're like, what does that mean? I'm like, I'm unwilling to say what I mean what I say and not say it meanly. I'm
Hmm.
unwilling to actually share what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking
Hmm.
for fear of being vulnerable, for fear of not having the upper hand, for fear of
Hmm.
not being in control.
Right.
And they're like, well, how are you like overcoming that? And
Hmm.
now, mind you, at the time, I'm whispering all this because even if you got to whisper, you got to use your voice, right?
Yeah.
And I said, I'm practicing being vulnerable. And
Yes.
at the time, I couldn't even pronounce the word. It was like, right?
Right.
Stumbling over it.
Right.
And I said, and I started to shift the way I spoke to my dad because
Yeah.
then I realized, oh, got it. This manipulation is very familiar.
Mm-hmm.
So then I started to ask my dad, Dad, are you asking me to do something? Are you trying to manipulate me into doing it?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, what? Like he couldn't even pronounce the word manipulation like I could pronounce
Mm-hmm.
vulnerability. And he's like, I don't even know what that means. And so when I would share this with my hair clients,
Mm-hmm.
they would then go away 4 to 6 weeks, come back, and they're like, oh my gosh, because of what you said, that shifted my relationship with my team at work, my boss, my
Right.
kids, my spouse, my
Yes.
parents. Like, have you considered being a coach, writing a book, starting a podcast, being a motivational
Right.
speaker? And they started to speak life into me.
Yes.
And so you're talking maybe 4 months
Mhm.
after his accident that I really started to notice
Yes.
that all of a sudden all these people were filling me up with words of encouragement that I'd never had experienced before or never
Right.
really noticed or paid attention to. But I started to believe them for the first time in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, what if I borrowed their confidence that they have in me
Yeah.
and I just try what they say that I could do?
Mm-hmm.
And what's the worst thing that can happen? I could learn a new skill
Yeah.
and still be able to do hair if I wanted to.
Right.
And as time went on and I kept learning new things and I wrote my book
Mm-hmm.
and became a speaker and started a podcast,
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden things started to shift
Right.
and coaching and I was then getting people were asking me to come speak at battered women's shelters
Mm-hmm.
where it was no longer about the shit that
Yeah.
we've gone through. It
Right.
was about the recovery and the healing process and why
Right.
it's so important.
Right.
And I started to notice this pattern with all these people that the healing process is something that most people overlook.
Right. So there's a couple point. Well, first of all, again, thank you for your vulnerability and your strength. But there's a couple points I want to make sure we don't brush over here. Number one, famous Jay-Z line, you cannot heal from what you don't reveal. All right,
Mm,
listeners, there's people who go through a
amen.
lot of shit, and you guys, again, are going through it. You don't stay in this world. You don't stay on this Move Swiftly podcast for any period of time if you're not ready to get healed and be vulnerable, because that's who I attract into this world. If you are not revealing and if you're not speaking it into people, it's just going to creep up in you and it'll just burn you day in and day out. I am such a fan of the fact that you looked at your clients and you saw the difference it was making in their lives. You're not one of these people that just started a business from a selfish perspective. You didn't just put a
Right.
book out there because you wanted to make a lot of money in 6 weeks. No, these were people that you knew over a period of time. Again, as a hairstylist, that's I mean, I get my hair cut so I can sort of resonate with the feeling. But when I speak to ladies, they're like, look, that's kind of a therapy session in itself.
Absolutely.
They
Yeah.
look at people like you as their therapist because you're making them look good, and then they go through whatever they go through and you're revealing these things to them and they're coming back to you saying, hey, you helped me do this, you helped me to. That's what led her into coaching. You don't just put the stuff out there, you don't just become
Right.
a thought leader overnight. It's because people
Right.
are coming to you telling you these things. It's a feeling I can actually resonate with too, because again, when I first put my first book out, I was a trainer at 9 Run and I was a boxing
Yeah.
trainer, and these ladies were some of them were in your situation where they were getting physically abused by
Yeah.
their significant others, and just the process, Shay, of putting boxing gloves on them,
Yep.
I had no idea the kind of
Yeah.
change it was making in their lives. So that
Yeah.
feeling said, okay, let's put the book out. Let's start to speak more about these things. So make sure you reveal your shit. And it's not going to be easy, but listen, nothing worth having actually is going to be
Mm,
easy. And the next point that I want to make, or at least have you speak on, is when you put the book out, I think the what attracted me to what it is you do was the fact that you made an acronym with FIRE.
mm,
Everyone out there, they put the fire emojis out and all that stuff, but I have yet, and I consider myself a real strong acronym guy where I know a lot of different
same.
acronyms. I
Yeah.
would love you to walk me through how you were able to kind of build that element to your business to where now that attracts a mindset like ours
Mm.
where you can, obviously you're doing some pretty big things now. So again, kind of speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to commend you for
Mhm.
being a trainer at 9 round. I actually took kickboxing too, part of my
And,
healing
hey, and
process.
it's
It's
therapeutic.
amazing.
It's
Yeah,
therapeutic.
it is amazing. It is definitely therapeutic. And then I switched to Krav Maga, which
I worked
added a whole nother level.
I
Love
worked at one
that.
of those too.
Oh, it was
Self
amazing.
defense. Yeah, I would. So
Yeah.
I'd be like, "What's his name? Put his face." I'd have the back.
Yep.
Put his face. Put his name. So
Yeah.
it
Oh
was.
yeah.
They felt it. They felt it after that 30 minutes. Mhm.
Absolutely. So actually, so my business when I started out, so first of all, let me say this. So one of my very good friends, and she's also my accountant, had asked me to speak at a battered women's shelter. And after she heard me speak, and she's my speaking coach, she's
Mhm.
like, "Wow, you have a book in there.
I have
You
it.
don't
Yeah.
just have a book, you have like several."
Yeah.
And the fact that said that to me, and then she said, and I love this. So for your listeners, this is a fantastic piece of advice. If someone is asking you your advice at least 3 times, that's a business.
Mm.
And
Well.
I found myself over and over again at people coming to me and saying, how do I recover from this relationship?
Mm.
And I'm like, huh, okay. So
Mm-hmm.
that was number one. Number two, when I started my business, I realized that I was creating hope
Mm-hmm.
for women to transform their life from trauma to treasure.
Yes.
And so my business was Sparks of Hope. And
Mm-hmm.
then right after 2020, on Memorial Day of 2020, my brother passed away. And 2 weeks later was his service. And I was served with a cease and desist letter from a nonprofit asking me to stop with the Sparks of Hope name
Really.
because they had trademarked it. And I
Oh.
was like, wow, okay. And so
Hmm.
I said, okay, okay, God, what do I'm a very spiritual person and I pray and journal constantly. And I'm like, okay, God, what you gave me hope. So now what is it? If it's not hope, what is it?
Mm-hmm.
And I just went into prayer about it and out came, you are fearless, intentional, resilient, and enthusiastic. And I went, oh, okay, got it. So fire. Okay, there it is.
Wow. I'm
Sparks
moved.
of fire.
Just
And
so we're clear, listeners, I made sure she did not tell me that until we started recording. So I'm I'm getting the revelation with you guys. You said fearless, intentional, resilient, and what was the E? Enthusiastic.
enthusiastic.
Enthusiastic. There it is, another one. I mean, I have a ton of acronyms, and you guys just have another one there. Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And I say enthusiastic, even though it could be excited,
Mhm.
because I am the chief excitement officer. It's
Yeah.
what I've
Yeah.
deemed
Oh, yeah.
myself
That's
as.
another point too. She doesn't call
Yeah.
herself the CE, is the chief excitement officer, right?
Yeah. And so when I started to write that down, like fearless intentional, I'm like, wait, this is what I help leaders do. I help first of all, I help people step into their leader role, right? Because I believe we all have a leadership role in us.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we take it to the next level and really step into that fearless, intentional, resilient, and enthusiastic about life and
Mm-hmm.
business? And it really becomes around our language. What are
Yeah.
we saying to ourselves? Are we being fearless with our words to ourselves so
Mm-hmm.
that we can be fearless with our language to our team or our family,
Right.
right? Intentional, same thing. Be intentional with your word.
Mm-hmm.
And then resilient is making sure that we're acknowledging all the muck and the yuck that we've gone through
Mm-hmm.
so that when a risk comes up and the fear shows up again, we can be like, wait, I've gone through something worse than this. I
Yeah.
know I can make it through this next step.
Right. So you've kind of already been mentioning something throughout throughout the entire conversation, and that is journaling.
Yeah.
Again, something that is very therapeutic, something I picked up on. Can you just speak on what journaling does for you, what it's done for you throughout this time, and how you've been able to use that to stay, like you said, resilient, stay enthusiastic, stay positive in the light of some really, really tough times?
Absolutely. So I started journaling, gosh, probably 25 years ago, probably more than that now, maybe.
25 years of journaling. I can only imagine what you're, and do you keep them all? Like,
Well, I did. I do have a lot. I've
yeah,
moved, so I did pack some up. But when I was with my ex, I would journal, and he would find them, and he would rip them up and throw them away, and make sure there was no quote
the fuck? The hell?
unquote evidence against him. Yeah,
Oh,
and I'm like,
wow.
first of all, your name's not in there, but he didn't. And it was mostly about praying for him. It wasn't about like what he was
Right.
doing to me. It was mostly praying, but he didn't care. So,
Right.
but I my first book actually is called How to Get Your Voice Back. And what I realized is that journaling is a great way to do what I call a brain dump.
Mm-hmm.
And that is to get out all of the negative things that you are saying to yourself
Mm-hmm.
onto paper. It's a very mindful practice.
Right.
It helps with your neural pathways in your brain to go through your brain, down your arm, onto the pen, written, not a device. It's on the written, pen
Mm-hmm.
and paper, pencil, crayon, whatever, and releasing it onto the paper. Then
Yeah.
once you do that brain dump of all the negative things that you say about yourself, then I go through and say, I am no longer,
Mm-hmm.
and put that thing. And then I think about the person or people that I admire most,
Right.
Jesus, Oprah,
Mm-hmm.
our
I was
friend
waiting for you to say.
Taj.
I was waiting for you to say her because Oprah was actually the one that kind of confirmed the whole journaling thing for me too. So.
Yeah. Whoever that look toward that inspires you, you write down their characteristic that is inspirational to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you write the two most powerful words in the English language is I am.
Mm-hmm.
And because we are a mirror of what we see in others, we are already those things, but we
Right.
don't recognize it. That's where the resilience comes in. That's where the acknowledgement comes in. And you write I am
Mm-hmm.
in front of those positive characteristics. And I started to do this over and over and over again, and that process really kind of ingrained in my brain differently thoughts than what I was having before.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to project my goals out into the future as if they've already happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to write I am, and then whatever the thing I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And I would do that over and over and over again for years. And then I got to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm done with this. And I just started writing them on a note card. I hung them into my office.
Mm-hmm.
And when I moved 2.5 years ago, I was taking these note cards off my office wall, and I'm like I've achieved
Yeah.
all of the professional ones and
Yeah.
not even realizing, like, yep, that's done. That's done. I did that. I'm doing that. I'm doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's profound when you take the time to be conscious of what your thoughts are, which
Uh-huh.
is what journaling really does, to where then you shift it because you make a decision to
Yeah.
think differently.
Right.
And then you make a different choice on how to act.
Mm-hmm.
That is when you get different results.
Right.
And that to me was like the biggest equation of how to change my life and my situation
Right.
was changing, goes all the way back to my mindset and the thought process.
Right. So if there was a person listening in, who would you say is sort of an ideal client, an ideal person for you to work with and kind of lock arms to build your business? What's the person that you would love to serve the most of? The room full of those people would be who?
Yeah. So high performance leaders who are in a some sort of mind loop of I'm not good enough. I can't make it to the next level. I'm stuck right here.
Mm-hmm.
I call it a hamster wheel because we think the same thought process over and over
Right.
and over again. Kind of like what I was doing when I was in an abusive relationship. It was a day in and day out. Here we go. I'm just going through the motions.
Okay.
I want new things, but I don't know how to get there.
Yeah.
So a high performance leader who's thinking that way and
Uh-huh.
doesn't know how to get out of it. Um, I do everything from, help people break through fear to hypnosis
Mm-hmm.
and releasing limiting beliefs
Mm-hmm.
so that you achieve not just the next level, but
Right.
above and beyond
Mhm.
anything you could possibly imagine.
And what would you say? So, is there anything that you can share that may be a tactical way in which you're able to get them off their hamster wheel? What
Yeah.
is like one of the things I'm a big Tony Robbins guy. One of the things he had us do was do the fire walk and break patterns and all that kind of stuff. What's sort of the thing if they're listening in that you would do to help them break that pattern of I'm not good enough, I'm not ready, or the stuff that they go through because there's a lot of business owners that are exactly like you just described they don't know how to, they don't know what they don't know. They just don't.
Exactly.
They're stuck.
Exactly. Well, I'll tell you about one of my clients that I'm working with right
Mhm.
now. We were just having a conversation. He was telling me what had been going on. And let me think of the phrase that he kept saying. Uh, don't hold your breath. He said,
Kept saying that.
as he's talking, he's like, yeah, I'm holding my breath. And then he would say something else and he's like, yeah, I'm holding my breath. And I'm like, and he didn't even realize he was saying it. And I'm
Hmm.
like, hold on. Was there any a time in your life where someone told you don't hold your breath? And he's like, yeah, my mom used to say that to me all the time. I'm like, okay. So we went through a hypnosis
Hmm.
and he was able to pinpoint it to the exact moment when that first showed up in childhood. And, our childhood experiences shape our adult decisions.
Yeah.
So for us to go through the hypnosis and release it, he was like, it's like watching him go from this like heavy feeling looking to this light, enlightened and lightened up. His whole posture even shifted to, wow, you can see the physical difference
Hmm.
in just one session of releasing that one phrase that we don't even know we're saying,
Because it
that
was
where
stuck
he's
in
like,
his
wow,
subconscious.
yep.
You're
And he's
stuck in
like,
the
wow,
subconscious.
that
Right.
doesn't, he's like, I didn't even know I was saying it.
Hmm.
And then I'm like, yeah. And when we look back on, what does that mean to you now? He's like, nothing. It means absolutely nothing. Yeah, I don't hold my breath. Perfect. Yeah.
Right. That is true. And the point about we all become a product, or we all have the thinking of what we were as children, that's another very important point to grasp, because parenting, I teach
Yes.
at a school now, and a lot of you guys don't really realize what you're doing to the kids, because it's coming, and I get it. You're trying to figure it out. But these kids are watching, man. They're watching, they're watching, they're watching, they're watching absolutely everything you do. So it's important that we do set a good example for the not, and you don't have to be fake with it. I'm not telling you to be,
Right.
but set a real example of you are constantly trying to do what you can do to just do right by them, do better than you had it. And I think that's an obligation for us as adults. So, with all
Agreed.
that being said, I do want to be very respectful of your time. Can you just kind of tell people how they can get in touch with you if they want to work with you? What's the best ways? Where do you sort of send people if they want to connect further?
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. You are an amazing host. And I love what you're
Thank you.
doing.
Thank you.
I watch you on LinkedIn and it's just like, wow, look at him go. So I'm
Yeah.
so glad that we got connected through
Yeah,
this.
and we have a
I
lot of
can,
mutual connections, by the way.
I
Got a
know.
small circle out here.
Yeah, and it's just great to be with other like-minded people.
Yes.
First of all. Second of all, you can go to shaysparks.com. That's SHASPARKS.com.
Mhm.
And you can connect with me on there. You can connect with me on all the social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. I would love to hear from any of your listeners if this resonated with them, if they're taking a nugget away and applying some wisdom in their own life.
All right. So the final thing I do, Shay, to close out all the shows, and again, you won't be the first one if you do. Do not be afraid to get emotional here. It just happens. I want you to go back to your former self. You are struggling with alcohol. You're 16. You're getting a DUI. You're drunk. You're dating this guy. I mean, your mindset back then, before the 25 years, when you were not sober. I want you to pretend that that young teenage girl, young 20-year-old girl has come into the Zoom room. You are who you are now. Give that young lady some words of encouragement, and we'll officially close.
It takes 90 seconds of courage to use your voice and change your life. That's it.
90 seconds of courage. Wow. And you put a specific time frame to it. All it takes. And the reason I have people do that, just so you know, is because if you are that young girl and you are someone, it doesn't have to be a girl, a guy, whatever is going through that specific thing, take 90 seconds. Again, this is all organic conversation, guys. Take 90 seconds, exercise some courage. Take it to heart. These are real stories, real people, real situations that they're living through, and they're giving you the story so you can improve and get yourself out of whatever situation you need to get out of. It's on you to do it. All we can do is provide the stories and provide whatever it is we can do to help you. So you guys have to run through it. All right. All that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.